Others are driven by persecution, poverty, disasters, resource scarcity, and environmental crisis. Children represent more than 50% of refugees globally, and around 1 in every 3 children living outside his or her country of birth is a refugee. Children in Asia and the Middle East are particularly impacted. In 2015, the Syrian Arab Republic, Iraq, and Yemen accounted for nearly 1/3 of the world's total of conflict-induced internal displacements. And almost half of all child refugees have their origins in the Syrian Arab Republic and Afghanistan. Children may be compelled to move within or between countries, with or without their parents or other primary caregivers. Many of the challenges that children face when they are forced to leave their homes are the same, regardless of whether they have crossed an international border. Their movement may lead them to places where they find safety and better access to rights, but it may also put them at risk, or at an increased risk, of exploitation, abuse, neglect, and violence. Today I would like to focus on children's needs before, during, and after undertaking this movement, and consider what kind of programming can best respond to these needs in a sustained and continuous manner. In particular, I would like to focus on those children who, for various reasons, make the journey unaccompanied by their parents or regular caregivers. As the number of children on the move is increasing, so too is the relative proportion of unaccompanied children who make some of the longest and most hazardous journeys. A total of almost 26,000 children braved the treacherous Mediterranean crossing from northern Africa to Italy last year. This was double the number from the previous year. 9 out of every 10 children who made that journey were completely alone, unaccompanied by their parents or a regular caregiver. Arrivals from the Horn of Africa into Yemen for onward movement have tripled between 2015 and 2016, despite the conflict in Yemen and the risky journey that requires. It is estimated that 1 in every 5 of those arrivals are unaccompanied children. In 2015, nearly 100,000 unaccompanied or separated children, primarily composed of Afghan, Eritrean, Syrian and Somali children, sought asylum in 78 countries globally, a 3-fold increase over the previous year. So much for the figures, which are alarming. What then should we consider as the essentials for this group of children? There is not one journey, nor one group of children on the move. The motivations and the aspirations of children who are forced or compelled to leave their homes are varied and interrelated, just as they are for adults. The vulnerability to risks and threats may be different for girls as compared with boys, for adolescent children as compared with younger children. Their situation may also change over the course of their journey, adapting or reacting to new opportunities, new information, or new threats. A child may also change so-called status while on the move, first becoming an internally displaced person within their own country, before crossing one or more international borders where they may become an asylum seeker and eventually a refugee. They may also find themselves for some period of time in a country of transit where they are treated and often ill-treated as an illegal migrant. Mindful of the potential risks for irregular migrants, children travelling alone can also be very adept at avoiding detection by authorities or even by humanitarian organisations. This can make such mobile children virtually invisible, particularly in urban settings, and it increases the challenges for us in monitoring their needs and in responding appropriately. For the purposes of today's discussion, I would like to highlight 3 groups of essentials selected not only because I believe they're key to children's protection and well-being, but also because they can and should accompany the child along that journey during displacement and movement. So the first essential is that of family unity and protective care. Research has shown that keeping children together with parents or caregivers during emergencies usually provides children with the emotional support that they need and reduces the negative impacts and the risk of developing severe reactions of distress. Yet, separation from family and carers may be a decision taken by children and or their family before they leave, before they flee from a crisis, or it may occur anywhere en route. Conditions of insecurity, chaotic movement across borders, or detention can generate family separation. In some situations of conflict and insecurity, parents may send children alone or with other family members in the belief, the genuine belief that they will find a better life. I myself have met Eritrean children as young as 5 or 6, sent alone by their parents with just one piece of paper with a name and phone number of someone in Europe. This is how such children are traveling. In other cases, family separation itself may act as the primary driver in a child's own flight decision in order to join their parents or their siblings or other family members abroad. These children, unaccompanied, separated from families, or potentially lost and stranded, are among the most vulnerable groups on the move. They are at high risk of trafficking, violence, sexual abuse and exploitation, kidnapping, detention, and forced abductions. The second group of essentials I wish to emphasize is a child's access to basic services. The rights of all children to a standard of living adequate for her or his physical, mental, spiritual, moral, and social development, including education, health, and adequate housing, is protected by the Convention on the Rights of the Child. Children who are displaced from their homes and social supports often experience significant psychological and social impacts, including exposure to traumatic events before or during their flight, and are also more likely to face unhealthy and unsafe conditions during their movement. This extreme adversity without adequate adult support can put children at risk of toxic stress, which can contribute to developmental delays and health problems later in life. And we've heard something of that from Dr. Mukesh earlier. Yet access to basic services, including psychosocial support and legal assistance, is not generally designed to take account of children on the move. Their lack of fixed residence or identity documents, language and cultural constraints, fear of authorities, restrictions on their movement, and a shortage of trained service providers can all inhibit the chances of these children accessing appropriate services. The third essential that I would like to highlight today is children's own agency and resilience. Children themselves are naturally active participants in their families and their communities. Before a crisis, children have family responsibilities, leadership roles in their schools or amongst peers, and they take their own decisions on many matters. During crises, it may be children themselves who take that decision to run away in order to better protect themselves. How successful children on the move are in addressing and coping with their situation depends on their protective environment, but also on their own internal strengths and capacities. The characteristics of individual children may influence their vulnerability or resilience. For example, their age, their sex, their ethnic group, or any disabilities they may have. And this should be taken into account. Gender-related discrimination and inequality, for example, may be present in the child's place of origin, some of the issues that we've heard from Lakshmi. This can negatively inhibit the capacity of girls in particular to access their rights. So how then can these essentials, family unity and protective care, access to services, and children's own agency and resilience be supported right from the start. Programmatic response for children on the move calls for a complex, multi-leveled and geographically diverse approach, which involves multiple actors. Many actors may be present in only one location or at one stage of that movement, or they may be mandated to work with only one particular group. These challenges are compounded by the invisibility of children on the move, particularly when they move out of what we consider the more typically emergency-affected areas where humanitarian organisations operate into more urbanised or developed settings. Drawing from my research of children on the move in the Horn of Africa, I would like to propose 10 programmatic recommendations for us to consider. 1. Expand the coordination and partnerships that enable a continuum of protection and care of children across all phases of movement and connect the responses between the areas of origin, transit, destination, and possibly return. As part of this, we need to actively seek out the linkage between humanitarian and development programming, including with poverty reduction strategies, education and employment schemes, social protection systems, environment and climate change programs, elimination of gender discrimination, and conflict resolution and peace-building efforts. 2. Integrate sex and age disaggregated data in displacement monitoring in order to understand and identify the patterns, trends, and impacts of movement and support evidence-based programming and advocacy. In fact, one of the main challenges for me in terms of undertaking research in this area was the severe lack of data specific to sex and age groups of children on the move. 3. Support local and national child protection systems, services and capacities in countries of origin, transit and destination as a prevention and a response to protection risks. As part of this support, we need to advocate for the laws and policies that integrate displaced children into public services and to prohibit detention of children. We need to map the services that are available within and across borders, and we need to monitor the bottlenecks in their implementation. 4th recommendation, strengthen mechanisms to keep families together and to identify and reunify children with parents and caregivers, if this is not possible or not appropriate, to ensure that alternative care is provided. In connection with this, we must also ensure that the capacities and procedures to determine the best interests of the child are also in place. 5. Provide birth registration for all children, regardless of the conditions or the place of their birth. This is an essential step in establishing age and authenticating the family links and helping to address multiple child protection issues, such as child labour, child recruitment, child marriage, detention of children, human trafficking and child prostitution. Birth registration can also facilitate access to education and other social services. 6. Strengthen community-based systems, including protective companion and peer support programs for the identification, monitoring, early warning and response to risks facing children on the move. Other social services for the immediate and the long-term well-being of children on the move. This may call for innovative and flexible approaches to facilitate access to education and other services, and I think we may hear more from other speakers today. Children themselves emphasise the importance of such continuous learning, even when they're in temporary settings and for very short periods. Education itself provides a source of safety, stability, and normal childhood development. 8. Commit to supporting children's mental health and psychosocial support as a core component of emergency programming. Importantly, supporting parents and carers' mental health as well also contributes positively to the care and well-being of children. 9. Listen to girls and boys from different groups and in different emergency and development settings, and ensure that their views are incorporated into programmatic development. in a way that supports rather than hinders their opportunities and well-being. Self-confidence and belief in themselves can also help children cope with stress, and we need to learn more about which strategies children themselves find most effective in promoting survival, resilience and safety. Children's voices need to be at the centre of our discussions. And finally, 10, innovate with child-friendly information technology that enables children to access information about risks, how to obtain their rights, and how to access services. In conclusion, when violence and insecurity force families from their homes, it is often children who suffer the most and suffer for the longest. The dangers they face once they leave home can be mitigated by well-coordinated, comprehensive strategies that begin from the time they flee their homes, or even beforehand, and are sustained throughout their journey. Thank you very much.
Registration rates just in the Horn of Africa, often they were less than 10%. That's in the country of origin. So highly challenging, but there are many efforts to specifically register displaced children. So it's, sometimes displacement can also offer opportunities to access certain services that children haven't had previously. And I think there is a big push to do that in refugee settings in particular for children. And then the question on gaps in humanitarian response, if I could answer that in 1.5 minutes, I'd make a fortune. But what I feel is that when we talk about children on the move in particular, there's a kind of compounding of vulnerabilities along the route. So often the children who flee are already in such desperate, vulnerable situations, and as they move along, their situation often becomes much worse, whereby they're detained or they're separated from families. So this issue of the vulnerability is core to it, but if we want to avoid that kind of compounding of vulnerabilities, we really need to do much, much better in connecting the dots. Connecting the dots along the way of that route, because unless and until we do that, children are carrying those vulnerabilities with them, and we're not really supporting them as we should.
Great. Thank you very much, Elizabeth. Finally, that's what